Welcome again to Leading Edge. I'm so glad to be with you in this third of the series that we've been doing on building trust in uncertain times. In the first part, we covered the three areas of trust, and they were institutional, personal, and leadership trust. Last week, we examined the centrality, of relationship in building trust. And particularly, we looked at the three elements of building trust through relationship. And these were communication, connection, and commitment. Now, all we've been saying apply at all levels, whether it is at work, in your business, in your family, your personal relationship, political leadership, whatever else, right? The same principles apply. So, I shall today share a few pointers, we'll call them tips, some proven tips that will help you engender trust with the key stakeholders in your life. So today, I'll be speaking on the 7 important trust factors. All right, so let me start with a story. It was on December 7, 1988, that a devastating earthquake with a surface magnitude of 6.8 swept through the northwest section of Armenia in Eastern Europe. It left in its wake a death toll of 25,000 people, with several more thousands injured, and the destruction of several property and, of course, public infrastructure. Now, something interesting happened. In one of the affected towns, a father rushed to his son's school, only to find that the school had been buried in the rubble with no sign of life. But he just couldn't, and wouldn't turn back. He had often told his son, "No matter what, I will always be there for you when you need me." And now, gazing at this heap of what I would call hopelessness before him, he remembered those words. Now, insane as it may appear, that father began to feverishly remove rubble from where he believed his son's classroom had been, while other grieving parents wailed helplessly for their kids, calling out their names. Of course, some sympathizers told this father to go home, as there was no chance that any of the pupils could be alive. But he replied, "I made my son a promise that I'll be there for him anytime he needed me, and I must continue to dig." And so he dug on. He dug for a grueling 8 hours. 8 hours then turned to 12, and on and on. But as he heaved away a heavy piece of rubble, he heard some voices. And then he called out his son's name, "Amand!" Then came the response, "Dad, it's me, Amand." Then the boy said these words, "I told the other kids not to worry. I told them that if you were alive, you would save me. And when you save me, they will be saved. You promised you would always be there for me. You did it, Dad." Moments later, Amand and 13 other frightened kids were pulled out of the debris, all by a promise kept. Now, my friends, this is trust, a promise kept. Listen to this. The key question that will be before us today will then be, how do you build a life where those connected to you can count on you anytime? We need trust between spouses. We need trust between parents and their children, between leaders and their people, whether those are church leaders or business leaders or political leaders. Trust is the evidence that we are keeping the social contract we have in our various relationships. Now, let me stress this from the very beginning, that building trust should be a deliberate agenda. Now, obviously, people often get into relationships without consciously thinking about how to make it really work. Now, if trust is critical to relationship and outcomes, whether it is business or personal outcomes, then building it requires intentionality. In other words, any relationship you come into, you need to think through, how do I connect with the other person? How do I build trust with the other person? That's the way it should work. Especially when we inherit a new team, or you get into a new relationship, or you have new people joining your group or your church or whatever else, or you encounter a season of rapid changes or uncertainty, there is a need for the leader to be deliberate about living out what I would call trust-building behaviors. Now, what that means is therefore that awareness is critical. Awareness at two levels: self-awareness and environmental or contextual awareness. I need to be aware what is happening around me and be deliberate about building trust with the people around me. So you need to be deliberate in investing and earning the trust of your team, I must say. That's your first most important key to building a productive relationship. Okay, so let's zero in now on what I have called the 7 important trust factors. Okay, so let's go. Number 1, let people know where they stand with you. Listen to this. Trust is not necessarily being Mr. Nice or Mrs. Nice or any of those feely thing, right? It is about people knowing who you really are and what you stand for. Listen, people want to know where they stand with you. That's it. I would prefer a tough and difficult boss who is forthright than a nice boss who is shifty and fickle, who says one thing to me and he means or does a different thing. Okay. Now, I had a tough boss once. He was so demanding, so difficult. People called him names. But one thing you couldn't take away from him was the fact that he was always himself. You knew where you stood with him. If he gave you his word, you could go to the bank with it. It felt safe dealing with him. Now, trust is to be who you really are. It is for those around you to know who you really are, right? There are those that believe that in order to appear powerful and invincible, the leader should be unpredictable. The truth is that if you want a cult image, then unpredictability can help you, right? In that case, forget trust. Trust and fear don't go together. When it comes to your overall values, what you stand for, your style, predictability helps build reliability. Right. So number 2, leadership is not a popularity contest. You must know this for yourself. Now, the job of the leader comes with a lot of contending priorities. The immediate implication, of course, is that often you are unable to please everyone at the same time. Your decisions are not likely going to be favorable to everyone. So what do? Feel at home then with the fact that there will always be someone who is hurting based on your decisions. Your job, therefore, is to do the right thing, not necessarily the nice thing. If it's a no, then say it, and it's okay. Be forthright. So, it's okay to say no. When you know it's a no, don't color it. The power to say no is one of the greatest tests of character. Often people say yes and make commitments when they know they can't do it. They know it's even an unreasonable demand on them. Yet they go ahead and say yes. Now they do this because they don't want the other person probably to feel bad at that time. But there are 3 challenges with this. Number 1 is that it's a sign that you are not in charge of your life. Others are apparently running it for you. Number 2 problem with that is that when you eventually disappoint them, as it often turns out, they still will get to feel bad or even worse. Number 3 is that this overall erodes trust and sometimes affects the overall relationship. What's my point here? Say no if you have to. I will prefer the boss that tells me an outright I can't or won't do that than the smiling boss that says, let me see what I can do, when they don't mean to do anything. The earliest leadership lesson I learned was this: leadership is not a popularity contest. If you seek to be popular, forget leadership. Right. So let's go to number 3. Commitment is the lifeblood of trust. Keep your word, even at the risk of a personal loss. Now let me share briefly a story with you, something that has come to represent for me the height of commitment. Right. John Robertson McQuilkin was a college president of the Columbia Bible College and Seminary, now Columbia International University, that's what they call it, For 22 years, he was a college president. In 1981, he got the bad news that his wife of 33 years, Muriel, had been diagnosed of early Alzheimer's disease. In the initial years of this disease, Robertson tried, of course, to combine caring for his wife and fulfilling his responsibilities at the school. But as soon as he left Muriel each day and went to the college, she would become anxious and distressed, sometimes even terror-stricken. It was bad. She only felt comfort and relief if Robertson were around her. So it dawned on him that the school needed him 100%, in the same way that Muriel needed him 100%. Now, in 1990, Robertson did something very few men will do. He stepped down from being the president of the college in order to devote time to care for his wife. This was huge. It was huge for two reasons. One is that men are typically driven by work, career, and success, sometimes above their family. Now, number two, there's a study that actually shows that 4 out of 5 women will stay by their bedridden husband, okay? While 4, the same number, out of 5 men will abandon their wives if the roles were reversed and it was a wife that was bedridden. So we ask ourselves, so why did Robertson do this? Why would he resign from such a prestigious position because of the wife's ailment? The reason is found in his letter of resignation. This is what he wrote. He wrote and said, "It is clear to me that Muriel needs me now, full time. My decision was made in a way 42 years ago when I promised to care for Muriel in sickness and in health till death do us part." He said on, "So as a man of my word, integrity has something to do with it. But so does fairness. She has cared for me fully and sacrificially all these years. If I cared for her for the next 40 years, I will not be out of her debt." That is big. And so I will ask you, how far can you go to keep a commitment to your spouse, to keep a commitment to your team, all right? To keep a commitment to your employees? I have found that one big sacrifice you make to keep your word to your people can secure you years of trust from them. Leaders keep commitments. I'll say that again to you. Leaders keep commitments. So I'll challenge you, keep your commitments. Now, number 4, own your part. Trust is reciprocal. You want your people to trust you? The first question should really be, do you trust your people? Or are you ready to trust them? You can't expect people to trust you when you have been untrusting and sometimes untrustworthy. You need to make a self-evaluation and ask yourself the following questions. Have I been untrusting? And do I trust the people or person I expect to trust me? Now, listen, and this is very true. Life is really like this. You get what you put in. When you don't trust the other person regarding their capability, regarding their potential, regarding their words, their motives, you only create room for mutual distrust to fester. I have found from my experience that the more you show your people that you believe in them, the more empowered they feel and the more they can count on you as an ally. Now, delegation devoid of micromanaging is one way to demonstrate trust. The other way is to acknowledge what the other party is doing right. If you want to build a culture of trust in your family, your business, in your church, whatever institution, perhaps a good start will be to stop acting like the chair of the census board. It may be to look for something your team member may be doing right and highlight it. The truth is that whatever you highlight, whatever you focus on, gets magnified. It increases. If you highlight someone's strength, it only grows. If you highlight their weakness, that too grows. It's a choice. All right? So highlight your people's strength. The third part of demonstrating, this level of trust is to show appreciation. It's a powerful thing when you recognize and appreciate the good work and ideas of a team member. It's a strong psychological tonic. When people know that they are valued, they become more productive and accountable. Appreciation should, as much as possible, therefore, be done publicly. All right? Where you can. It passes a message and creates positivity around the people. It was Ken Blanchard and Spencer Johnson who called this 1 minute praising in their book, The 1 Minute Manager. Try and practice it. In a word, practice trust if you want to build trust. Okay, so let's go to number 5. Number 5 is learn to listen. For those who are used to directing, this may sound really tough, right? When you practice active listening, you give yourself the gift of the diverse and rich perspectives that other people carry, which can help you in your leadership. One way you can practice listening is to use the art of questioning. Asking questions forces you to listen. A simple "how are you doing today?" or "what are you working on today?" can help you pause and listen. Now, when people feel you are listening to them, it tells them you are interested in them. And this engenders trust. Nobody trusts a leader who hears only himself. The leader that does not listen will soon find himself surrounded by people that do not say anything. I'd like to take that again. The leader that does not listen will soon find himself surrounded by people that do not say anything. And when your people say nothing before you, be sure that they say a lot behind you. They don't trust you. Simple. So, what will I encourage you to do? Listen. Number 6, show your humanity. Show your humanity. All right? Now, I read Elechia Made's novel, The Concubine, many years ago. One of the characters, a clown in that book, was called Wado Wakri the Wag. Wakri had this unique mannerism, which leaders, I think, will need to adapt to their situation. Wakri in that novel would emit so much humor and sublime wit. Part of what he does is to taunt people. He will abuse people, as it were. He will mock people. Yet, Wakri was a very ugly piece of creature, I will call him. So, what he does is that he begins with mocking himself first, pointing to his own ugly futures. This way, he is able to connect with people, and they feel at ease when he begins to mock them. Can I tell you this? Leaders are human. Can I tell you another thing? You are human. So it's okay to show your humanity. The myth of the powerful and invincible leader is a big lie. Such false image of invincibility, of someone who doesn't go wrong, can never be weak, only creates fear and distancing. Right? So people trust you better when you are human, when you are real, when you are simply yourself. Now, 3 ways you can demonstrate your humanity could be: 1, share your personal stories, especially stories of your personal struggles and how you overcame them. It builds human bridges in the minds of your people. The other way you can show your humanity is what I will call walk the floor. Walk the floor. Walk the floor and stop by your people's desk to just catch up. Come down to their level. This is a powerful practice. In those days, we had what we called management by walking about, right? Walking the floor is an intentional practice of building connection. It says, I am part of what you are doing. All right? The third one is to admit when you make a mistake. For me, this is a normal way to just be myself. It is to practice candor. It is saying, I am sorry, or I was mistaken, to your subordinate. It does not diminish you. All right? It actually elevates you in their eyes as an honest and dependable person. So what will I say to you? Be human. All right? Okay, so we'll get to the 7th point. The 7th point is building trust can be a long project. Give it time. Yeah? Give it time. Building trust is not automatic. It will not happen overnight. All right? It will take time. So what do? Be patient and consistent in putting out the right actions. What will happen? You will soon start to see a difference in the feelings and actions of those around you. So be ready for the bumps on the journey. People may misread your intentions initially. They may seek to take advantage of some of your acts of kindness, of transparency, of vulnerability. Don't let that distract you. It's about building a track record with your people. Once you remain yourself and continue what you are doing, sooner than later, it begins to pay off. And the reward is very handsome. So what will I say? Don't give up yet. Good. So we have covered these 7 important factors, trust factors I call them, that can help you in building a culture of trust in these uncertain times. So let's do a recap. So they are, number 1, let people know where they stand with you. Number 2, leadership is not a popularity contest. Do what you need to do. Number 3, commitment is the lifeblood of trust. So what do? Keep your word, sometimes at the risk of a personal loss. And number 4, own your part, because trust is reciprocal. Number 5, learn to listen. Number 6, show your humanity, because you are human. And number 7, building trust can be a long project. So give it time. Be patient. Okay. So, here we come to the end of today's session. And this whole session on building trust in uncertain times. I do hope it's been a very useful journey for you, as it has been for me. I will encourage you once again to please join us every single week for these sessions. If you are not yet following us on all our social media handles, please do follow us. And if you want to be part of the Joshua Leadership Project, why don't you visit our website, www.joshualeadership.org/membership, to be part of this movement. Thank you so much for listening again today. This has been Leading Edge.